We are also launching an annual National Justice Dialogues together with a national anti-corruption conversation that will bring together all stakeholders in the justice chain to have conversations on enhancing access to justice, ensuring efficiency of the justice delivery, and also ensuring accountability of duty bearers in the justice sector. We are asking each one of the justice actors to come up with the measures and mechanisms they have put in place for accountability. The police, why do you make a decision to arrest? Why do you make a decision to investigate? How do you communicate the information in the occurrence book so that there is accountability and people can know and track from the system why somebody was arrested and taken to the police station? So we are also revamping our judicial education programs, as our director has said, by positioning the Kenya Judiciary Academy as the hub for regional justice dialogues. In this way, we will be enhancing the quality of justice, not only in Kenya, but across the region. The judiciary is also committed to being a central player in rooting out the scourge of corruption that has been an hindrance to our country's development and the objectives that the country has put in place. We are committed to playing our active role and being very proactive within the institution and within the wider government. Within the judiciary, we have taken several initiatives and measures to ensure that our institution is a corruption-free zone. But for this to happen, we need to have a conversation with the Kenyans and with all the other actors. To this end, we have proactively invited the EACC to conduct a systems audit.
Chief Justice Martha Koome, they are engaging development partners and also actors in the justice sector. And I can pinpoint some of the things that she has talked about. The judiciary is committed to rooting out corruption in the country. And something good is that all the vulnerable will access justice because of the rolling out of the desks at, you have seen some of them at the Huduma centers. And she said that virtual courts and all matters to be handled virtually, all courts will be automated by the end of March this year. And something that she has noted that is currently in the country and happening every now and then is the cases of femicide, where she says that they are having SGBV court across the country, and also to ensure that everyone who is affected by this new issue that we have in the country is catered for by the courts. We will be getting a little bit more of that a little bit later in our subsequent bulletin. But for now, allow me to now introduce my panelists. Beginning from my immediate left, we have Dr. Churchill Saoke. Dr. Saoke is a leadership and governance expert and is also a lecturer at the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. And just next to him is another lecturer and also a political analyst. His name is Oscar Omondi. Gentlemen, karibuni sana.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Maybe you can start from where CJ has left. I'm quite sure she's still continuing and matters femicide. This is something that is touching a lot of Kenyans, and she has said that she is endeavoring to ensure that the judiciary looks into SGBV cases and also the vulnerable to access justice. I'd like to pick your mind on that, Doc.
Well, this is a timely it's a timely statement and remarks made by the CJ because of the recent events that happened, especially where we are seeing events of murder related with crimes of passion. And I think that it is important for us to reflect deeply as a society how best we can reduce these femicides, how best we can reduce murders emerging from these scenarios. And I think that beyond the justice systems, I mean, there's need to strengthen the justice system by ensuring that all the institutions of the justice, the arm of justice, from the investigation all through the arms of the court take leading role in doing this. But then also, it's also important to look at the other contributing factors. What is really making this to happen? What are the social factors that need to be considered that we can then deal with as preventive measures to help reduce these femicides?
Oscar, and another thing that she has mentioned still on access to justice, because that is her core mandate, is the establishment of virtual courts. And by March, she says that this will be actualized by the judiciary. We have seen one of the issues that the judiciary has been plagued by is the issue of a lot of cases haven't been heard. And the virtual courts, COVID came and taught us, yes, we can actually do this, just like we see in other developed countries. I'd like you to touch on that.
Thank you very much, Troy, for inviting me and having this discussion of what Martha Koome is discussing today. One, before I even touch on the virtual court that you are asking, a little bit about this concept and whatever is going on about defining these deaths as just femicide. I think maybe we could have rushed, because the person who gets to define a phenomenon or gets to define a discourse actually wins a debate about it, because they own the definition of that particular discourse. I would prefer that they would have gone a little bit further, just as Dr. Hari has mentioned, to understand the root cause of whatever is happening. In my analysis, I think something different might be happening. Now we have serious problem of organ harvesting and selling of organs across the world. I'm told that in America or in Europe today, if you have a problem of kidney, for example, you take more than 200 days to get a new kidney. So there could be so much going on at play that if we just define them as femicide, then we might miss a lot. But I think, for example, whatever happened in Roy Sambu, that particular killing, where I think actually she was a JKUAT student, I think so, or KU student. And she might have been lured to this particular place. But the killing, where this person was actually using a hacksaw, it's like extracting things. Because Johnson Oduor, who is the government pathologist, says he's never seen such a thing because the nails were cut and all this. To me, it was something that could be a crime, not just a crime of passion, but a crime of somebody who was trying to maybe extract some probably body organs. And maybe if we investigate one case, other than just defining everything generally as femicide killings, then we end up losing a lot of things that should be investigated. So the investigation officers who are responsible for this should be able to do individual analysis to understand actually what was happening. The people who are arrested, the people who are standing charged for murder, like the lady who owns the Airbnb, and then the security guard who was there, and some people who are just part and parcel of people just doing their jobs. But they're held by police for the last almost 10 days. And the police were allowed to hold them. I don't know if they will be charged with murder.
Yeah, it's a good thing that you've mentioned, because also the CJ has mentioned the police in regards to how they handle these cases before actually they even make their way to court. Because you've seen a number of cases frustrated in the court because there was showed the investigation from the beginning.
Like, for example, if you connect the two, sometimes I try to connect the two between the femicide that has been going on, they call it so, and the Shakahola thing. You know, they're charged 97 people are being charged for murder of 237 people. This is chaos, because you are charged individually. That Troy, you killed blah 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 until 237th person, and you are 97. Even taking plea on such a case will take months, will take a number of months before they even finish taking plea. And how will this one go? And the bodies that were found at Shakahola, did they have kidneys, for example? Was there something more?
I think that's quite a deep, deep conversation that we will need to look
over
at,
the virtual,
not only the cases themselves.
Yes. Over the virtual, I think this one, because everything is being done virtually now, for NGOs and government meetings are done virtually. I think doing this virtual court is a good a thing in the right direction, but we need to prepare the infrastructure so that we don't have a lot of challenges, so that justice is not got. So long as we have a very good infrastructure where we can be able, everybody has to get a chance to access justice. You know, sometimes we have internet problems left and center, somebody witness might not be found, then it becomes a mess. So if we don't prepare the infrastructure very well, then we will end up with chaos again.
We will hold our words that by end of March we'll be having all the virtual courts, despite the infrastructure challenges that we've witnessed in the country over the years. But away from that, we will be touching something on the judiciary a little bit later on. But the head of state is in Italy for a 2-day, of course it matters, he is the chair of Africa for climate change. But a number of people have raised issues and concerns in regards to the numerous visits that the head of state has made. Actually, as has been pinpointed in one of the papers, that he has made about 40 in the last 1.5 years or so. Doc, I would like you to touch on that. But the head of state has indeed mentioned that all these trips are going to bear fruits.
Well, the people of Kenya have got every justification to raise issues regarding the trips, and because the cost of living is high. People in the news, you'll hear about children not going to schools, and so their questions are genuine on the basis of government expenditures, whether it is really a priority. And I think it is incumbent on the executive to ascertain as to whether these travels really worth the prioritizing in comparison to some of the urgent expenditures that Kenyans expect. In general, it is important to understand that as a top diplomat of a country, he holds the key to the image of the nation, and also just portraying and projecting the country's foreign policy, projecting what it's aspired for the country to be seen in the community of nations. And that of course, it's needed to be done with moderation, considering resources that are available. And because the justification that sometimes when you look at a presidential entourage in travels, I mean, it's quite extensive, and it involves a lot of planning, a lot of resources, as compared to maybe when you just have the person in charge of foreign affairs traveling to represent him in some of these functions. So I think there is need for sort of like a balance of it, and I think that also when you also consider the fact that he's getting an entry into the international community, he's not compared to some of the other players that have been in that similar position before. He is an unstarter. He is starting and he's creating friends, he's creating networks. So maybe that is why from where he sits, he needs to get into this, and specifically projecting himself into the 2027 election. So when you look at those political angles from a political perspective, it makes sense for him to travel, but the fears of the people and the concerns of people about the cost of the travels is very genuine, and also need to be looked at by the people by his handlers and advisors.
Oscar, I remember last year the head of state did cut a number of foreign trips for top dignitaries, including PSAs, CSAs, and he said that was one measure to cut down the foreign travel and the cost that come with the travels. And with all fairness, in as much as a lot of people, and especially the opposition, are mentioning that, man, this is too much, the trips are too much. With all fairness, he's just 1 year in office. He needs to make links, contacts, and as Doc has talked about, he needs to the foreign policy of the country. But he said that, hold me to account that these foreign visits are bearing fruits.
And now, if you want to hold him to account now that the foreign visits are bearing fruits, I really don't have any evidence as we speak now for the last 40 that whatever fruit, because he needs to be accountable, really, that I used this amount to do this many trips, and whatever we got in return is this. It's like economy. We're running an economy, you know, a long time.
But somebody would argue that the fruits are yet to come, but they are on the
then you can ask me that question when the fruits have come.
They're not ready. They're not ready.
See, the issue is that, again, to me, is where is he heading to? One time when Mandela became president of South Africa, he was asked the first question, what is your foreign policy? What do you want to do after being president of of South Africa? He said, we will go where the money is. Yeah, and he was asked, where's the money? And he said, US and Japan, by that time. That's where we will go. By that time, the Japan economy was doing very well, and the US was doing very well. And he said, yes, we will go where the money is. But countries like, for example, Italy, I will tell you, they are doing as bad as we are. You get me right? So not so much that we can't gain from some of this trips.
But this one is crucial, because being one of the top guys in Africa who are championing for climate change mitigations in Africa, I think this was a master tent for him.
I've never even understood Africa championing for climate change. Africa is not even part of the climate change discussion. The climate change, the people who are destroying the ozone layer and giving us a big problem are developed countries, and they're adamant that they're not going to stop. So Africa is only getting the bad part of it, and we are getting these floods. And you know, the last time we were discussing El Nino. Now again, I told you after El Nino we'll end up with the La Nina, and now the sun is scorching her. In Lodwar, I'm told people cannot sleep at night because it is too hot again. Now, give it another 1 month, you will start seeing deaths. We are not prepared again for the second time.
We're hoping we're not going to get there. We remember what the last drought did to the country, and also to livestock. But away from that, Doc, yesterday the government did actually acknowledge that over 131,000 pupils who are supposed to join high school have not done that, and the Ministry of Education has moved with speed to ensure that they know exactly what's transpiring. But we know half of the problem has been the issue of money, and 131,000 students is a huge number. I remember the presidential task force. As soon as President William Ruto took over office, he established an education task force. One of the recommendations of the task force was to collapse all the bursaries. We have so many bursaries, from the NGCDF to the ones offered by foundations, to one offered by companies and even banks. I've seen some banks who have some foundations. A good example is the Wings to Fly. But this one of the recommendations that wasn't taken into action, and now we can see that a number of students, 131 students, have not joined high school.
Yes, Troy, it's a worrying situation, and we have to admit that if we don't handle it well, we are likely to get to the point where we are before the 100% transition. Remember, the previous regime have been very deliberate in ensuring that you have 100% transition all through the stages to the, up to the tertiary and university, and I think it's something that is very important in achieving the universal goal of having increased literacy of the population. So, in as much as some of the recommendations, one of the recommendations that was made by that team was to collapse these scholarships. In my opinion, I don't believe that really is the issue, because we need to ask ourselves, before this we've had decentralized scholarships that have been provided by the CDFs and these other organizations, and somehow it's been working. And the issue for me, I don't think is collapsing these things. The more we have decentralized scholarships, that people that have got different criteria of selection, the more we open up the space for opportunities for people for the students to get chances of getting these scholarships. In my opinion, I think that we need to ask ourselves that why is there increase in the reduction of transition? Why do we have less students not getting admission to secondary? it is because of fee problem. What is causing this fee problem over time? The cost of living is increasing. That's the bottom line. And the other thing is that there has been attempt by some of the headmasters and principals of schools to put hidden charges that scale up the fees for entry to an extent that you realize that what we see in the media is not necessarily what parents receive. And government officers will make declarations, roadside declarations about the need of not increasing fees, which that does not necessarily happen. So in the long run, the parent is left helpless. You go with your child to school, you realize that there is a very hefty, fee that you need to pay, and charges that you need to pay that you cannot afford. In the long run, you go back with your child. So I think that we needed to be more honest in our approach to dealing with this issue. They are 100% transition and ensuring that the fees of the subsidized that government has been subsidizing, there is specific threshold that has been determined by the ministry. That policy is implemented down into until the lowest school to the letter. Because in that so doing, government operates for the good. And I think that if we open up space and allow newer charges, we are then limiting the number of entries into secondary schools. And over and above that, other than that stringent regulation, we also need to encourage more players to join in supporting the education through scholarships. And I strongly believe that collapsing these scholarships will be detrimental, because we will be giving singular criterias which in the long run will not appreciate the heterogeneity of the country and the pupils in terms of their needs. So the more we make it decentralized, the more we appreciate the heterogeneity, and the more we appreciate that the selection criteria need to be more adaptable to it becomes more centric to the student himself, based on the regions or wherever, or their economic status.
Yeah, Oscar, Doc seems to hold a different opinion and gives the reasons for that. I'm looking at Bungoma, Kajiado, Narok, Kilifi, Uasin Gishu. Many students haven't joined, part of the 131,000. And I remember yesterday speaking to a parent, and he said that NGCDF, you remember in Kirinyaga, there were almost a stampede, because parents there fighting for that just one opportunity for their kids to get the bursary. And I remember the parent said that unfortunately his kid would not be given bursary because the father does not hail from that constituency. It makes a lot of sense because all the constituencies are given the NGCDF. But he says that this is one of the criteria. Education is education, you know?
Yeah. But again, when we come to definitions, I don't know to what level of education I need to go and research that is defined as basic education. Because I think for a fact, something like secondary education should be defined as basic education. According to our laws, basic education is a right. Everybody has a right to get basic education. If you go by that doctrine, that basic education, that education is a right for every Kenyan, then school fees should be legal. You shouldn't be you cannot make it a right for everybody, and you still put a condition that for you to get it, then you have to pay school fees. This is rubbish. That is why we end up with 130 and people scrambling to get government school fees or government bursaries that are also skewed in their distribution, which is a problem. It's a challenge. Again, CDF should really be checked again and see how do we distribute this particular fund, because it has many, many challenges after being in place for the last almost more than 10 years. No, more than almost 15 years now. It has its own challenges. Otherwise, for me as Oscar, being an educationist, I've never supported the 100% transition. Never.
Why is that?
Because I think the previous system that we had systematic way of releasing people out. For example, at class 7, long time ago, you know, you got to get where you are good at, and if you want to be an artisan, you can live at that level. But the 844 system created a system where everybody is pushed to get a university degree. That for you to become successful, you have to get a university degree. That is not the way we need to do development. Development should be that the masses get skills and job opportunities. And skills are sometimes even much better when they're trained at workplaces. For example, we need to build in seriously and invest seriously in our Njue Kali sector, so that when we get this 130, remember last time I was here with you when we had already released KCSE, I told you that, hey Troy, 50,000 people have gotten E's. An E is a zero. That is the best definition of an E. It's a zero. It's nothing. Yeah. But now why do you have to go to university, to secondary and spend 4 years and get nothing? Get me right. So I don't want to cast aspersion over this particular group 130 because they are mixed up. The people who've gotten 380 and they're not in school. And the people who also fail and cannot get access because of failure at that level. But the thing is that the 100% transition should be checked, one, and see if we can get a way of sieving some at that level, and we get other areas where students can go and continue getting skills that are what we call the secondary education, other than pushing 100%. Because when we have to try to evaluate now, when Professor Magoha came up with the idea of the 100%, then we end up with 50,000 E's because of the 100%. But if we could have sieved a few of these guys, probably we could have not ended up wasting their time in secondary school and going to get an E after 4 years of training. So there are many things that need to be rechecked and remove politicians out of this system. Let academics do their work. It is not a political issue. It's a political issue, but education still, there are experts who can evaluate. There are research findings that should be done to check 100%. What are its challenges to what? And for the last, for example, 5 years, people who started with Magoha in his 100% policy, how have we ended up with this one? Now, this 130, it is because a lot of indicators shows that the economy is doing very, very badly. That is an indicator that the economy is doing badly. I tell you, for example, where I come from in Kisumu, it's chaos because the insecurity has gone so high. Why? Because we have those 50,000, now we have 130. Where are they going to end up with? In the streets of the cities, and the insecurity that we experience sometimes back in the country will creep back. But these are indicators of a failed system, of crisis because of the cost of living and because of lack of money.
All right. Doc, I still want to pick up where Oscar mentioned that indeed 131,000 is a huge number. And even if we have 100% transition, what he says makes a lot of sense. 4 years and then you end up having scoring an E. And maybe at 131, of course, there's somebody who has already done the KCPE. Maybe we should make our TVETs a little bit more attractive, because mostly when I was in high school, anything technical college is for those people who scored maybe D minus, you know. But now TVET has changed. A lot has changed in the TVETs. We have also incorporated a number. Countries in the developed world are looking for people with such skills, plumbers, masons, all these people. Maybe we should try that route, because 131,000 is a huge, huge number.
Yes, and that is actually the basis of the theory behind 100% transition, where you do this multi-stage exits of students as per their performances. So where you have student transiting, so you have to establish a baseline that forms the basis of that acts as the basic level of education, that at least everybody must have that basic level. Then after that, it becomes multi-stage, and you know, when the students get through every evaluation, they exit, and so that the people who get to the apex, they are not necessarily the whole group that came from the bottom. So it is sort of like a triangle, where with each of the stages within the triangle, people having somewhere where they are falling into. And you know, when, like for example, that means that, like when you see in some of the developed countries, you have very strong emphasis onto the technical colleges, all right? Because this is where the skills are, this is where the technical skills are, these are the people who do the work, these are the people who know how to do the how. And then a very small segment go into the university, because these are more abstract people. You know, these are the thinkers. They just think, they don't necessarily do, they do designs. And you know, because of our misunderstanding of this, that is what brought what Oscar was raising, where you have the population has been made to believe that the highest level of success begins by you getting to the university. That's a lie. All right?
Yeah.
Not everybody is supposed to go to the university. Majority of the people should actually get to the technical colleges, because these are the people who hold the key to the development of the country. And the smaller few go up into being the thinkers of the country. So when you do that, then you realize that the cake becomes very big. And you know, because of this misunderstanding where everybody needs to go to the university, even the expectation of the industry changed, because they think that when you go to the universities, we expect you to do certain things. Yet those things that you expect a university student to do, a graduate to do, are things that should have been done by people who've gone to technical colleges. So just hold on before you come in. So it is important to look at these multi-stage exits with a visualization that everybody who exits into every stage, it becomes a platform for success. And I think that is the key point, that when you exit into the technical college, you graduate with a skill, that skill is acceptable within within the employment sector, and you are paid well for it, and then it becomes something that you feel you get value, and you feel that you are also part of, you are valuable in the society, so that you don't feel like, I wished if I had gone to the university, then I would have been much better.
It's true, because looking at what the head of state said, that over 130 young men and women have been employed in the affordable housing project, and looking at the bulk of this, other than the architects, mostly they are artisan. We have the masons, the plumbers, we have the electrician, and this ecosystem will be boosted by TVETs if at all we do that. And it's a good thing that you mentioned that this is where the whole world is looking into. There's something you wanted to add, Oscar?
Yeah. Again, just to remind you that in the previous system, we didn't have like the TVETs you talk about. We had them, but like in the village polytechnics, there were not as many.
Yeah.
But what was there that we should be able to go back to? The secondary schools that we had specific secondary schools that were offering some particular technical courses.
Centers of excellence.
The centers of excellence. Yes. So we had like Mwawego Technical, or we had Kisumu. Kisumu, for example, Kisumu Day School was a secondary school, but was a technical school. So we should make our secondary schools technical schools, some part of it. For example, mostly day schools. Part of them, so that we build this thing, because other than just building the infrastructure called the TVET, it's just too heavy investment. But our secondary schools, some of them, we should make some part of them to have a technical bit, so that these people graduate with technical know-how. Number two, you're asking me about the president going to Italy. I'm sure the president must come back and say that we've secured 800,000 jobs in Italy. We secured 200,000 jobs from Germany. We are exporting unskilled labor, which is very dangerous. For any development of any state, the unskilled people, the masses, should be able to work. You, as a government, don't think so much about the people whom Dr. is saying, people who can go to the APEC. These people can work anywhere. These people can do a lot of things. But when the masses, those populations in Uhuru Park or in political rallies, who will go there on a Monday or Tuesday morning and fill that place because it's a public rally, because they don't have anything to do, that is where you should invest in, on unskilled people. If you invest on unskilled people, automatically development will be there. And the reason why, for example, the dollar is going up, one, because of what? Because they're not doing manufacturing, because they're not producing. We are importing, because they claim, the Kenya Kwanza claim that the problem of the dollar going to 161 now is because of petroleum and all this trade. It doesn't. It only controls only 20% of that exchange. What controls the high rate of our currency is import-export. The fact that you import so much and export so little makes your currency become useless, because you're just a buying and consuming population. But if we can invest so much on manufacturing Get these people who are doing manufacturing to do subsidies and reduce things like the cost of power. Currently doing even a welding, if you go to a welding guy to make for you a window, they will tell you, yes, we will charge you for labor, but pay for power. They give you that token number, just pay for power because it is too expensive. So you cannot do manufacturing here. If you can't do manufacturing here, our economy dies. But whom do you want to invest in terms of manufacturing? Those are skilled people. Those are people who are supposed to put a lot of investment because those are the masses. Those are the masses that we need to invest in. So when you're investigating this, at the end of the day, for example, I went to school, but how does my schooling help me apart from having the knowledge I have? It pays my small bills, but it mostly helps 80% the society that I come in. So when you educate somebody, you don't educate them for themselves. Troy was educated as a broadcaster, but how does it help? Troy has very small bills to cater for himself. Mostly, he helps society. So when we have that idea, then we will see the reason why other developed countries don't charge this rubbish thing called school fees. Because you're not developing these people for themselves. You are developing these people for the society. And it makes sense because the informal sector forms bulk of the Kenya working force as opposed to developed countries. And Kenya is still a developing country, the mason, the welders. We really need these people, and I'm quite sure that the government should be looking at this so that we may look at this number, 130, and try to actually reduce the number.
You know, when you look at even the leveraging on the informal sector, what we have branded informal sector, some of the products that these people produce are huge, and I think that it only takes a deliberate government to initiate a policy that makes this local production from these Juakali sectors become, we create a market for them locally and look for a market for them outside. I mean, before Germany began to become the major producer of automobiles, look at the vehicle that they produced, which is still recognized today as I mean, if you have the old Volkswagen that was built by the Germans during the war, you don't want to sell it because it is heritage. I mean, we still can take that mentality amongst our people through the Juakali products that we are producing, accelerate that production for our local consumption, and even look for external export. Then in the long run, some of these people, and I have done this myself through some, in some of the works I've done in engineering. These guys, they know how to do it. But sometimes all they need is somebody to think for them to make what they're doing a little more modern and more, more bringing a thought process into it. So if there is convergence of these levels, you have an empowered, the people who know how to do. And there is convergence with the people who can think. I can tell you, we can actually produce things for this country and produce even for external market.
Very well. It's a good thing that you guys are both lecturers, so you actually know exactly what you're talking about. Oscar, away from we've mentioned housing, and the public participation is currently underway. The courts halted, the High Court had halted, and the Court of Appeal did upheld the same decision. And looking at the public participation that is currently underway, some people have poked holes because when the court had stopped, the MPs were in their constituencies and the public participation kept going on. Yesterday it was, I remember the committee, the finance committee had sittings with people with disabilities, and they raised a number of issues, including the cost of the house. This is the public participation. This is something that should have been done a little bit earlier and comprehensively. This is something the court even pointed out, that there wasn't adequate public participation in regards to the housing agenda by the president.
I mean, the public participation that is done, first of all, it is illegal. There's a court in Kisumu that stopped it. But parliamentarians decided to go ahead and do it. Now, we will end up in chaos because the courts will not move when one court has already blocked even the public participation to be carried out. Now, again, the construction, I don't know. Because what I see in TV is that most of these houses are almost complete. The construction is going on, and they are launching more houses. Some of them are just complete, just waiting for finishing. So it is difficult. And now we are doing the public participation, whether the project should go on or not. And the Court of Appeal has stopped it. It is a bit chaotic on how things should happen. And even if you couple this with the meeting that the President had with the Chief Justice, just 2 days after the meeting, then the Court of Appeal made its own pronouncement about this. So I really don't even know. It is too early for us to even try to do a political analysis about this discourse, because it is disorder. It is disorder. But again, disorder sometimes is a political instrument, can be a political instrument, because the system is being clogged by the happenings of how this particular administration is trying to work. And they're trying to convince the court that, let's do this. But you see, the Chief Justice is in a very awkward situation. I'm sure she doesn't have the phone number of this magistrate who sits in Kisumu, who made that particular decision. She doesn't even know what is happening in Kakamega Court, because there's a High Court sitting in Kakamega, and there's a High Court sitting in Kisumu, and there's a High Court sitting in Njue. And
the good thing that the court pronounced itself on that.
Yes, the court's pronounced, and she doesn't have any power even to stop that court. She doesn't know what to do, because now the political system wants us to move on. So even the public participation, one of the reasons why what the appeals court raised, that is not into the public interest, that this one should go on. I don't know if January salaries will...
No, actually, alone, a number of Kenyans are waiting to see whether the government will go ahead, because that will be an illegality in regards to that. But still on the same, the Attorney General has been on the receiving end. Some of Kenyans, including Kotu Secretary General, have faulted the Attorney General for the advice, because he is the chief government advisor. I remember the CASs were blocked. Our police going to Haiti has been blocked. Housing has had its own speed bumps. The same thing has happened on Social Health Insurance Fund. And they have pointed out that the AG is on the receiving end in regards to what he advises the president to do.
That is wrong. I think if you ask me, an advisor, if you appoint me, Troy, to become your advisor, my work is to advise. And your work is to either decide to take the advice or not. So whether the Attorney General is advising, it depends with the person who is being advised to take the advice. It's either the Attorney General is incompetent, or the President is not listening to the Attorney General. So blaming it on the AG could be, is an advisor to government. But it doesn't, advisors, you don't kill them. There are people who just raising, can I advise you on this particular thing? But the way you want to do it, the decision relies on you. So the Attorney General could be advising or could be incompetent over this particular, because they have lost all their cases. Because, and why are they losing cases? For example, issue of public participation. This is a very simple thing. Just do it. Why do you have to bring in acts of parliament without public participation? These are small things, these are obvious things, that this one will fail. And most of them have failed because even the CAS, when President Ruto appointed the chief administrative secretaries, there was no public participation. And there was no public participation to what? Uhuru Kenyatta appointed only 26 in office, which were legal. Ruto appointed 50. So the court says that the difference between that 50 and 26, like 24, the additional 24, that particular number wasn't subjected to public participation.
And also the High Court has mentioned that the CAS is not enshrined anywhere in the Constitution. Yes. But either way, we witnessed a number of cases where the government did not obey any court orders. I would like to pick your mind on that, Doc, because I do even remember the BBI also fell into the same quadrant. Remember the back and forth, the AG should have done ABCD, and the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and even the Supreme Court dealt a blow on the BBI and case closed. We are having the same speed bumps when it comes to some of the government projects that the government is intending to do, and especially on housing. The executive will always want to implement their policies and push them, however much they push the people to the limit.
And I think that with the independence and some of these judgments that are now coming up by the courts against the executive and the legislature, it is an advantage, and it really shows, you know, the separation of powers, which really was the spirit of the 2010 Constitution. So this is something that should actually continue. It works in the best interest of the people if the executive and the judiciary and the legislature do not agree. Because that disagreement then brings divergence of thought, which makes at some point the people not to be vulnerable. Because you're imagining a scenario where the executive has control of all the organs of government, and they push the people to the limit. The people have nowhere to go to.
Yeah, right? But actually, what Troy is, just to interject a bit, what Troy was trying to ask is that we've gotten to a situation where all of them, you know, like now the executive is not doing anything. All the projects of the executive, from appointments, even the virtual courts. Yes. The Uduma thing.
Yes, actually somebody filed.
So there's nothing. It's actually an advantage. It's actually an advantage so that they go back to the drawing board and do things right. No, because if we just agree and the courts agree with them, like for example the aspect of the national housing. I mean, the population is so helpless about it. They don't want it because they're not sure about how this thing is going to be implemented. So anything against it is an advantage to the world.
Advantage, yes, but
all right. Just a minute. I'm informed by my director. We need to cross over to the forum, a mining sector forum that is currently at the Serena Hotel, and the UDA chairperson and Embu Governor Cecily Mbarire is currently speaking. Let's first of all cross over. We'll be back with this discussion.
You know, the government taking this matter seriously and establishing a fully fledged ministry at national level, as well as most counties that have mineral potential coming up with departments that are looking into issues mining, exploration and exploitation. Also, most importantly is that we have a mining act that is equally a big achievement towards the success of the mining sector. Also, the concept of conducting airborne surveys and crowd truthing in areas identified as potential is a step in the right direction, as was mentioned earlier by the PS. And I want to say that in particular, Embu County, we are going through this process. We have a team of about 23 experts right now who've been camping in Embu County since Thursday, and they are busy doing crowd truthing. Yet a new term that I learned about last week. That's why I'm telling you I'm in Mining 101. And they are busy going around and checking what it is Embu County has. And we hope that out of these efforts, as was mentioned by the PS, that the 16 counties will surely become the new center of attraction for development for investors, private investors, both local and international, so that we can begin to take advantage of this great potential that is in our counties. Also, it's important to say that the introduction of quarrying as part of mining is a big boost to the mining industry. I think Embu County, we do have that as a major resource, and we are really looking forward to the growth of that particular sector. So in Embu County, we do have 4 sub-counties, and mining is mainly concentrated in 2 sub-counties, mainly Bere North and Bere South. And only last week, the CS Mining, the Honorable Mvuria, visited our county to announce that we are one of the 6 counties that have coltan, which is a very critical mineral used in issues in phones, the production of phones. And we did go to the ground and we visited, I think, 2 sites with the PS. And it was clear that there's been a lot going on at that level, except that it wasn't coordinated. There isn't a lot of resource that has been put in it. So most of it is what you'd call kienyeji mining by the small mining teams at the grassroots. And we hope that with that announcement by the PS, we are going to have major players coming on the ground to support us. As it is, we are already getting a lot of interest. I have had many phone calls. The CS has also called me to tell me there are very many people who are interested. The president of the Chamber of Commerce has told me some people are interested. So no doubt the future is looking bright. So in Embu, we do have, as I mentioned, coltan, which is a major discovery that has already been done. We also have rare earth elements like cerium. We have mica. We have radioactive minerals like uranium and thorium. We have aquamarine beryl, whatever that is. And we have abundance of granite rock for quarrying of materials. And we have laterite soil for maram extraction. So the challenges that we are facing at the county level is, number one, there's low funding from national government to deal with exploration and fact-finding, and we are happy that now the national government is coming in to support us. And also we are happy that now we have a legal framework within which we can work with, and especially so in helping us discourage illegal mining in the county, because most of these minerals are found in the deepest of the villages, the very remote areas. The infrastructure to get there also is a big challenge, and obviously as we get resources out of mining, we'll be able to, I'm happy that we are able to reinvest that money back to those communities so that they can grow and accessibility can be easier. And then, of course,
That has been Embu Governor Cecily Mbarire there speaking at the mining summit right here in the capital, Nairobi. Great news. Kenya has discovered coltan, which is a new black gold, as Oscar likes to call it, and huge deposits. Now they are having a summit to know exactly the perspective of the mining industry in regards to this and others, including the safety that we've had a number of. And because of the interest of time, we will have that in our subsequent bulletin. Still with my two gentlemen, they disappear. We might have the, would that pose some of the challenges that have been posed, including matters, drugs and security as well?
Yes, for me, I think where the free visa, from where we started, we're discussing about the femicide issues. You see, some of the people who were arrested were actually found to be Nigerians who were in Kenya illegally without documents.
Oh, okay. Just a minute, because Doctor has quite an emergency. Maybe I would like you to touch on that, and then maybe you can continue with Oscar. That, in as much as it boosts a lot of things, including the money that we'll be having, it boosts trade. Of course, it boosts a number of sectors, because these guys are coming with the foreign exchange that we really, really, really want in our country. How can we ensure that it becomes only a profit and not a loss for the country?
I think the visa-free, for me, the visa-free policy is misguided, because there are very key roles of visas in countries in terms of regulating security, and also even just putting the country putting the dignity of the country in the community of nations. I mean, one of the things that makes everybody want to go to the United States is the myth around how you get their green card and how you get their visa, and people will spend huge sums of money just to go and get it. So why are we making a country so cheap to get in? Why are we allowing a country to be a gateway for many things? So I think for me it is something that should have been thought through in terms of looking at who are the segments of people who really need this waiver, the foreign direct investors, some of the key manufacturers and things like that, or maybe some key personnel that will then infuse very core skills to our economy. So just opening it up is misguided, and somehow it's not practical.
Oscar?
Yes.
Doc says maybe we have opened a kind of worms in as much as we are going to get a lot of foreign exchange.
Yes, I agree and don't agree. But the other thing is that there are many challenges of implementing such a policy. It's because of, one, the thing is that the free visa, you need to securitize so much so that we are able to be able to track who comes, because what was the idea is, the question is, why do we have to have visas? What is the reason of having visas? Because before we just decide, okay, we don't have visas, we should have gone back and checked, why did we have to? Because we need to control population. Control population to know who is here, doing what, at what time. That is why we have, it was part of controlling populations and governance in terms of migration, because people migrate. It can support maybe tourism, for example, can support our markets, for example. You know, there are policies like this have been implemented elsewhere. For example, the emergence of Dubai, which was not a very big powerhouse long time ago.
Yeah.
The thing was that what the Dubai did, that they made a policy that getting goods into Dubai is free, tax-free. And removing goods out of Dubai is also tax-free. But Dubai was not doing manufacturing of these goods. So people from China, manufacturers from China and Japan and all over the world that were doing manufacturing around Asia will bring their goods tax-free into Dubai. People who want to buy them mostly from Africa and wherever will go and get them from Dubai tax-free. So how does it make money in Dubai? What they do is that when you are there for like 5 or 6 days or 10 days, you have to live there, pay for hotel and all this, because it's a marketplace. What they did, they only create the marketplace. And now the immigration, the influx of the people there, they get their returns. Very good policy. All of a sudden, Dubai became. So this is a good idea. But implementation should be based on some other things to address challenges, mostly securitization, everyday securitization. But if you just allow people to flock here, we will have organized crimes being done here. Because even, and you know, in this time where we have social media, I even suspect that even the people who lure these girls to these Airbnbs are not in the country. They could just be luring them through social media, place them in a particular place, get an Airbnb somewhere, apply for that. So the person who is coming to do this crime is just somebody who is also only going there, placed, do the crime and leave. So there's no contact. It becomes very difficult to even investigate to know who committed this crime, because it is now has an international perspective, because we have social media, we have the internet where it cuts across. Somebody in wherever can always lure somebody from, for example, Roy Sambu or from the Kenyatta University to a Roy Sambu Airbnb room, which are also online things. So when we're dealing with these ones, we must know that how do we secure our borders? Otherwise, we will be dealing with something that is
Indeed, very well said, because Kenya is one of the countries in the region that has quite porous borders. We have seen in Mandera, in Lamu, we have seen some attacks. And also we have seen in court a number of foreigners arraigned because of being in the country illegally. That's where we put a cap on this first hour, but on this second hour, we are delving into matters affordable housing. And more specifically, we are engaging the specific engineers who are mandated with actualizing this project, and some of the challenges that we don't see, some of the profits that we might see, we are going to put those things into perspective in just a little while. You're watching Channel 1 News Check. It's time for me and my colleague Byron Abuli to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
It's a cocktail of emotions, the puns that cracks up the family, greed that yields power, and a hunger for success. Friends turn to foes. Survival for the fittest is the drive.
Who are we blackmailing?
But nothing beats the feud in a family where one disappears and another fights for the crown.
It was not supposed to go this far.
It's the desire to succeed that keeps us going, the deception that keeps us digging, and the laughter pill that keeps us living.
Welcome back to News Check. Thank you indeed so much for keeping it KBC Channel 1 on the second hour. As I mentioned earlier, is that we're looking at the deeper details of the affordable housing. Where are we? The housing agenda is one of the president's key development agenda, and he mentioned this even not only in his campaign trail and also in his manifesto, but he has actualized that via affordable housing, which has been challenged in court. Well, the affordable housing project has met a number of speed bumps, and as we speak, the High Court and the Court of Appeal did mention that it's illegal and targets a section of the population, and the head of state says this project is already a train that has left the station and it's here to stay, and he is actualizing the framework itself. The public participation is currently underway, and we have seen a number of members of parliament drum up some support for that. Yesterday we had the Finance Committee meeting a section of Kenyans in regards to the same a number of Kenyans did raise a number of issues which we are going to be looking at, including people with disabilities, and to try and put this thing, the housing agenda, into perspective. We are joined by Engineer Crispus Wadimba, who is a principal consultant infrastructure project, which is one of the key agendas of President William Ruto. I would like to pick your mind on the current public participation. And Karibu, we haven't met this year.
Thank you so much, Njue, Trevor. I'm glad to be here. Happy New Year. It's been a while since I've been here.
Yes.
But I'm happy. And it's good that the country has matured in terms of the discourse we have. We are not discussing too much politics. Now we are discussing the agenda of the Kenya Kwanza government, interrogating, challenging it, and understanding what it is all about. So it's really exciting that we are putting politics aside and focusing on development. My take with the housing issue is that it's a good idea. In other jurisdictions, they have focused on providing decent housing for the people. We have majority of Kenyans who don't have decent housing. Kibera, Korogocho, there are many slums across the country. Bondeni, where I come from, in Nakuru, there are many challenges as far as housing is concerned. But also we have an opportunity as a country. Many of us don't live in the urban areas, but we are also looking forward to the future where majority of the young people we have today may not live in the rural areas, we live in the urban areas. And therefore the government is planning on how to prepare to receive those urbanites as they come to the urban areas. Now, the challenge we have as a country, we don't have enough resources. So the problem we have here is not about solving the need, is how to solve that need. Where do we get the finances to solve that need? And a few of Kenyans are being made to pay for the majority. So that is the whole hula baloo that is around here. Who is paying for what? Who is paying for who? So to be very fair is that the employed, the formally employed are being obligated to pay for housing for those in the informal or vulnerable areas. But as you have said, it's supposed to be affordable housing. But if you look at the proposals that are out there right now in terms of how to acquire these houses, you find the house is 3.6 million shillings. And you're being told to pay 10%. So that is around 360,000. So what is left for you to pay in, I don't know how much time, is around 3,240,000. If you divide that by what we have been told as rent to pay, most Kenyans are being told to pay 3,000 shillings, 5,000 shillings. So if you are to pay 3,000 shillings, you would have to pay for 1,000 months to pay 3 million shillings, isn't it?
Yes.
Because 3,000 times 1,000, you get 3 million.
It's a good thing. I wanted to ask, is it practical?
Is it not? It's not practical. What they are saying is that you will pay 15 years. In 15 years, the maximum you can pay if you're paying 3,000 shillings is probably 450,000. I mean 540,000. So still, after 15 years, you've not been able to pay even 30-40% of the value of the house. So we need a clarity.
And is it the gray area that a lot of Kenyans are also concerned? Because even if you tell me to maybe 5,000 per month, it still doesn't make 15, even 20 years.
It does not make, because if I was to pay 3 million shillings in 15 years, you do the mathematics. I need to contribute more than 30,000 every month to be able to pay.
That's not affordable. That's not affordable.
And that's not affordable. Number two, you've already told that person to look for 360,000 at the beginning of that project, before even occupying that space. And these are Kenyans who we are saying we are giving them 500 shillings on Hustler Fund to start a small business. So how will they raise how will they raise disposable income of 1,000 shillings a day to pay a mortgage of 30,000 a month, if that is the reality?
It's a good thing, because yesterday during the public participation by the Finance Committee,
yes,
2 questions were quite striking. One is the deposit. Somebody said, I'm from Kibera, I only have 2 meals every day, because if I have a third meal, that disarranges all my budget.
Yes.
I live in a house that I pay 1,000 shillings. Even if you tell me I'll be paying 1,500 per month, I still cannot afford this.
Yes.
How do we make this house really affordable?
So the question everybody is asking themselves, including myself, are we really building these houses to sell to the vulnerable at a discounted rate? And if it is discounted, who is paying for what they are not paying? Because if you are going to give these people a house at 3,000 shillings for 15 years, we need to do those numbers. In a year, that person is supposed to pay 36,000 shillings. So in 10 years, that person is supposed to pay 360,000. So in 15 years, that person is supposed to pay 540,000. So if this house is going to cost 1.5 million shillings, who is going to pay for the balance of 1 million? If this house is going to cost 3.6 million, who is going to pay the balance of 3 million? So is the government going to pay? Are these going to be subsidized housing? Are we taking public land, giving it to private people who, yes, we have agreed they are vulnerable, and giving them money to pay for a house, our hand-earned money as taxpayers, to lift them in terms of their status? Are we giving social housing, not affordable housing? Because social housing is where government says we are spending these billions to lift the masses, and we don't expect them to pay. But if you are taking taxpayers' money and telling them this is housing levy, affordable for people to go into the market and buy, then we are not being transparent. And that's a challenge we are having with a lot of the policies with this government, that things are not adding up. G2G was not adding up. Now affordable housing is coming out. It's not really affordable. It's probably free houses and how are you going to determine who is getting that house?
And I think this is the reason why the court said, the High Court said that levy lacks comprehensive legal framework, and said it violates Article 10, 201, 206 and 2010 of the Constitution. And we are talking about people who low income earners. At the end of the day, even if I'm able to raise the amount, what happens if somebody dies? What happens if somebody is incapacitated, either by an accident or something? Does this house revert, or is unable to pay completely? Does this house revert back to the government? Or this is the framework that even the court said that there is no framework in regards to affordable housing? Ideally
today, if you go to a bank, if you secure a mortgage or a loan, term loan for that matter, the bank asks you to take what we call credit life insurance. So I'm assuming whoever will receive this house will have to be insured. In the event he's not able to pay, the insurer will pay the rest. But we haven't had anything. But we have not had. See, that's the whole issue. Is that this whole thing has so many gray areas that any person who does, you crack the numbers, you look at the text, you don't see clarity, and that's what we are asking the government. Can you give us clarity so that even if we are going to champion for you this agenda as experts, please let us be able to understand what your thinking is all about. But they don't want to allow experts into this conversation. They just want to do things in their own. I spoke to somebody in private and asked, you guys are selling these houses, affordable housing. They told him, we have done 2,000 houses. 1,000 are for the government, for the affordable housing program. The other ones are asked to sell to the market. So if you have your money, come and buy from us. But if you want to go to Boma Yangu, go and log in and buy. Then I ask you, so who is going to pay you for the 1,000? The government has already paid us. So already money is being taken from taxpayers to pay for something. And therefore, we as Kenyans have already paid for these things. So we have a challenge. And who is going to pay the final bill for this? Is it the vulnerable? Is it those low-income people, or is just the taxpayer? We need that clarity.
And I'm looking at the housing agenda. Of course, I would also want to own a house here in Nairobi. I don't have one.
Yes.
And looking at my payslip, and I'm quite sure I can get a Boma Yangu. What about somebody like Engineer Wathiba, who I'm quite sure has deep pockets and he can be able to purchase a number of houses? This will disadvantage a number of people. How do we ensure that if it's Njue, he gets the one house that he's paying for? If it's Engineer Wathiba, he gets the one house he's paying for. People with deep pockets might misuse this opportunity and buy houses to later on resell these houses.
Well, you see, as a country, we have a lot of ways to mitigate from such a scenario. Anybody who is going to qualify to buy these houses must be a taxpayer. So you have a KRA PIN. And KRA means you pay payee. And payee shows how much you earn. That's a very easy way for the government to vet that as long as you want to apply for these houses, you must present yourself with the Kenya Revenue Authority PIN, showing the taxes you pay, which shows the salary you earn, and therefore you qualify. And a KRA PIN will entitle one house to one KRA PIN. Very simple. So government will be able to lock anybody who wants to present himself for buying multiple units. But I know there are those who will use the vulnerable to buy those houses. I can come with 10 vulnerable people, present themselves as buyers, but behind the scenes, I'm the one who is buying these houses. So we need to be able to have robust mechanisms to mitigate from this system being abused. We have seen, for example, when they were giving fertilizers recently, somebody was able to get fertilizers worth 30 million shillings and sell in the market, despite saying that we have a mechanism to make sure that it is farmer with the amount that is required to have. This man did not even have a piece of land, but he was able to acquire 30 million worth of fertilizer.
Actually, that is where I was going.
Yes.
Where somebody may choose proxies or might use relatives to have a number of houses, and especially those people with lots and lots of money. But before we answer that, let's first of all cross over. We have Green Faith Africa, which is launching its regional office right here in the capital, Nairobi. They are multi-faith-based organizations steering climate justice and action. And let's first of all listen in. Currently speaking is Reverend Fletcher Harper.
Our theory of change is simple. I really don't need to explain it to people of faith. We make up more than 80% of the world's population. We are not some timid, irrelevant minority. We are the best hope of the world. We are the people who, when there is darkness, bring light, who, when there is sadness, bring joy, who, when there is pain, bring comfort, and who, when there is a lack of vision, articulate a picture of what the future can and should and must look like. We know that about ourselves. Our traditions are indispensable. Imagine a world without faith. How quickly would we circle the drain? 80% of the world's population. And more of us are concerned about climate change. We see it. We feel it. It impacts our lives. It destroys our farming. It inflicts cruel droughts and fires on us. It forces too many people against their will to migrate because they cannot survive where they've lived for generations. More and more of us are concerned about climate change, but still we're relatively silent compared to our numbers. Here we have some giants, some lions. I said before some of you came in, my favorite animal is a trout. It's a fish in North America. It's a beautiful fish. The only challenge we have here is that the predator of the trout is an eagle. God knows there are a lot of eagles here in this room. I'm watching out. But we, as people of faith, don't yet know exactly how to take action about climate change. We're still learning. And so what Green Faith does is we try to organize people of faith to come together in green faith circles, to go into action in campaigns against fossil fuels and deforestation and related financing, in support of just climate solutions. And we equip people to take bold action publicly and to speak out about why they care and why they are taking action. We're creating this multi-faith vanguard with many, many partners because we know that together, when people of faith do this, we represent an unstoppable force for good. Try saying no to millions of people of faith gathered together for the right reason. Just try it. It doesn't work. You can go to the next one. This is our theory of change. Some people, as Marin said, like images or like sound. We do eco-spiritual education. We talk to people about what is it in the Vedas, in the sutras, in the Quran, in the Bible. Where are those passages that give us enlightenment and vision and understanding in life about protecting the earth? Because we all need that deep source of wisdom and a power that only comes from the deepest places within the human spirit. We train people in skills about how do you organize, how do you build collective power locally? Because we know that together, when people have that training and those skills, they can make an enormous difference. And then we move together into public action, and we see that when we've got this community, what happens? We move finance from climate destruction to equitable solutions. We stop new fossil fuel projects, and we secure a just transition and loss and damage funding for people who are suffering through absolutely no fault of their own. I have no doubt that this works, no doubt whatsoever. And I also have no doubt that with the hundreds of millions and billions of people around the world who are people of faith who have not yet heard this message that collectively we believe in, that we have to get up and move. The time is not long, and it is not vacation time. It's not holiday break for the climate. It is time for action. There's a wonderful saying. I hear these sayings different places around the world where we work. It's an Irish saying that I love. Maybe it's because I'm an argumentative New Yorker. There's an Irish saying that says, is this a private fight or can anybody get involved? This is our time to rise. We weren't always this way. I'm an Anglican priest. I was a parish priest for 10 years in the state of New Jersey, just next to New York City, when several of us came together and had this sense. We really didn't know how to articulate it very clearly, because those of us who have been around faith communities for some time know we've really been learning about how to speak about this. 20 years ago, most faith communities, most spiritual communities, most religious communities we had a reverence for the earth, but we weren't connecting it with these contemporary issues in the way that Reverend Les Morey so eloquently and powerfully did. So we got started in New Jersey in the early 1990s. And Daisy, you can go to the next slide. At first, we were learning what's possible. And we were doing a little bit of everything. We were doing education and awareness raising. We had an early project putting solar panels, getting the financing to put solar panels on churches and temples and mosques, just to try to make these buildings a beacon of hope and a vision. And we started right from the start. One thing we saw quickly was always, not sometimes, not a bit of the time, but always, the people who are impacted worst by pollution, by climate change, are the people who've done nothing to create it and the people who've done nothing to generate it. Because pollution largely...
Reverend Fletcher, live Speaking about climate change, it's a green faith organization, a faith-based organization that is launching a regional office here in Kenya. They're championing the climate change agenda and talking about how even faith and religious institutions should also join in these mitigation efforts by the government, because mostly they have been centered to governments in the country and also in Africa. We will have more of that in our subsequent bulletin a little bit later. But just in case you joined us, this is KBC News Check. We are looking at the affordable housing agenda. We are at the public participation stage, and we are also keeping tabs with the real action itself, the cost itself, and the workmanship as well. We have Engineer Crispus Wadiba. Thank you so much for joining us again. And before we went we crossed over to Reverend Fletcher there giving his sermon in regards to climate change. Persons with disabilities yesterday had an opportunity to air their views, their concerns in regards to the agenda. And one of the questions that came up in regards to the affordable agenda, are these houses persons with disability friendly? Because I visited one project, it was work in progress. I didn't see the ramps, I didn't see the lifts. This is something that the persons with disability, if the court, they mentioned that there was violation of and also discrimination. They might raise issues in regards to how these houses are built, because a person with a disability has a house in the 20th floor, you don't have lifts, you don't have a ramp, that would bring issues.
Now, you see, those issues that are coming up right now are what definitely the courts of Kenya are trying to mitigate, not become a very big issue in future. Where, for example, a building has been done and people with disability go to court and say this building cannot be opened because it is discriminatory in the way that it was constructed. Despite billions being spent in the construction, it becomes a stalled project. We have seen many projects where they are ready to be used, but they cannot be used because of a court order and their justifications in terms of in as far as why that order is in place. So it is important that the government allows the process of public participation and inclusive participation to be carried out in whatever it does. We know very well this issue of housing levy was a bit rushed. There were issues that needed to be addressed that were not addressed, that are now coming out. Even with this very short public participation process of 2 weeks, serious issues of grave importance are being raised, for example, by the PWDs in terms of the cost, in terms of accessibility, in terms of the infrastructure, the way it is being done. We have seen professionals saying we are not being involved in this project. So there are many areas that needed to be addressed. But it seems, yes, this was one of the president's very important agendas to deliver. He feels that there are people there who are trying to sabotage him in delivering that, and he's saying, look, I was given powers to deliver and I must deliver. But you are given powers to deliver, but you also are given powers to reach out to the people and work with them. So I think it's how you use those powers that matters the most. In this case, he has this justification as to why he wants housing to be done for the hustler nation, because those are the people who put him in power. But even them, they're having concerns because the final product does not seem to be achievable to them. Majority of them may not be able to achieve ownership as much as he says, this is what I want to build for you guys to own. The pricing he's giving is not achievable to them. The payment terms are not achievable to them. The conditions to participate in the acquisition of those houses are not easy for them to reach. It is still a preserve of a few. And even the numbers that are being constructed cannot meet the needs of the entire hustler nation. The hustler nation is very big. We are a country where poverty levels are over 70% of the country. So we are talking about over 30 million Kenyans in poverty. You understand? Yeah. If you are doing 250,000 houses, we still have another 750,000 households who will still be left out. So what are we talking about them? So there are many issues that we need to address as a country.
Talking of benefits, the head of state has mentioned that as we speak, over 120,000 youths have been able to secure some employment, some levels of employment at the affordable housing. And that's in 6 months. A lot of people are not seeing this, especially the FKE, that's the Federation of Kenya Employers. They are poking holes on the agenda itself, saying that the high costs and the mystery surrounding the affordable housing agenda will water down the 120,000 jobs and still counting.
You know, I'm in construction industry. And if you compare the jobs created in the construction industry compared to the jobs in the manufacturing, in the agriculture industry, tourism, those jobs, in terms of sustainability, the jobs in the construction industry are time framed. Meaning, if this project is finished in 6 months, in 1 year, that job is gone. But if you look at manufacturing, those jobs, if I create a job in the manufacturing industry, that job can be there for the next 10, 20 years because it's producing consumer goods. But once you do a project, you're done with it. That's the same way you go, they come open up a road in a certain area, young people will get jobs for that day, entrepreneurs will make money, but they'll talk about those tenders 10 years later, how they made money. But they are not sustainable jobs. Okay? So this is one area that, yes, he will use now to create short-term opportunities for the young people. But we also need to have long-term opportunities. Jobs that can be there for 10, 20 years. If I get into this industry, will I be there for 10, 20 years? You understand? And that's what the FKE say, because the FKE, most of the members of the FKE are manufacturing sector. There are people in the media, there are people in the tourism sector. There are people who industries have been there for 10, 20, 30 years. Banking industry, they have been able to create jobs and expand the number of jobs created. They are sustainable jobs. They are jobs that can meet one generation after the other. So that is where the disconnect is.
And the head of state did say that not only are these houses affordable and going to change the landscape, the house ownership in the country, and a number of Kenyans are not quite comfortable with the 1.5% deductions. Actually, it was 3. It was halved by Parliament to about 1.5%. That is the 1.5%. That is the number that we are working with. That shows that the government still needs a lot of money. We have seen the expressway, that is a PPP. Should we involve other partners in this endeavor to ensure that we have the houses that we need and the sufficient capital that is required? Because it's a big project.
You see, if this project was designed in a way that it is the private players coming to build houses, then financial institutions become the intermediary between the buyers and the seller, it would have been very easy, because you would have looked at where are the costs for what makes housing very expensive in Kenya. So you say land is a problem, approvals by government are a problem, consultants are very expensive, taxes on the materials are high. So if you want to make these houses affordable and you want to cut the cost from 100% by 40%, how do we do away with this, or how do we reduce this? Then once you reduce this, you tell the developer, if you do these houses under this affordable housing scheme, you should not sell these houses at the market price, because we have already mitigated, or we have been able to reduce a number of costs that other players don't have. And therefore, when you sell this house, you sell at a discounted rate. Then you tell the financier, if you're selling your financing to your buyers, what are your costs? What are those costs that make your financing very high? We are going to reduce that cost, so that when you sell that money to buy this house, the people buying it buy at a discounted interest rate. Then you bring all these people together, you'll find that industry is sustainable. In the sense that I will look for government to help you get the land and the concessions, the rebates that the government has provided. Then I'll also ask the bank, look for your customers, who bank with you. Give them this house which is affordable and you should avail it to them under the concessionary interest rates. And we sell these houses together, both the banks and the developers. And the government will be there to secure this whole ecosystem without having to tax people. But now that we want to tax people, and we are already there, we need to agree that this is not about affordable housing. This is social housing, where you will be taking people who are vulnerable, you give them free housing or subsidized housing, and they stay there.
And there's some level of partnership, talking about PPPs, there's some level of partnership because counties are providing the land, the government is coming up with the raw materials and the labor, and housing is more or less a devolved unit, right? Should we have more partnership with county governments in regards to the same? Because at the end of the day, we need these houses completed and affordable.
Well, if you look at the housing, the county governments, to be very honest right now, most county governments don't have the technical capacity to deliver some of these massive projects. You've seen buildings collapse within those counties where they have jurisdiction. And they still blame the national government for those failures, meaning they still don't have the capacity to control development and make sure that development within the area is of the required standards. We have seen where so-called county engineers with fake papers. We have seen where an engineer, quack engineer, has approved 500 projects. He has no human capacity to attend to all those sites. So in terms of counties doing these things, we still have challenges to address as county governments to be able to have that. And if we are able to address that, then we can be able to roll out this kind of project. But the issue of PPEs, the private public partnerships, there is a policy, there is a law in place. If we use that as part of the affordable housing deliverable framework, then we will not have a lot of this problem. Many of the Kenyans who really want housing and affordable housing, and they have regular income, they would participate in that program. But we need to say some of these projects will be social housing projects where it is for the poor who cannot even afford. We are giving them those houses. Yes.
And we also be looking at the private sector to know, as the mortgage companies, are they going to benefit or are they feeling the pinch? Because these houses are far much cheaper than the market rate. We'll be touching that. But for now, let's first of all cross over to Parliament. As I had alluded to earlier, is that the Finance Committee is still having the public participation sessions. Let's first of all cross over to Parliament and listen into the public participation exercise that's currently underway.
To this fund and develop houses for sale. I think that, to me, that is a very important point because I'm just wondering if we are collecting 60 billion for the houses. Does the government really have the capacity to utilize that kind of amount of money in a year? You know, those are the issues which to me are in my mind, and which I think as a government needs to look into. Can this private sector have access to these funds and develop houses for sale? The issues of sanitation, I think that's very important, but I thought you'd go further and talk about the issues of security, health facilities, because you're bringing people together somewhere. If you bring like 500, 1,000 households, you can just imagine how many children are going to be living together in that place. So the issues of expansions of the health facilities, the schools, and that kind of thing. The issues of discrimination. If you look at section 4(2)(b), they are bringing the non-salaried people. But if you go further to Section 6, the minister or the CS in charge of Treasury has the discretion to exempt some people. So to me, when you look at that, that means the people are going to be left to contribute to this are the salary people, because the issues of the cost of collecting these monies may be very difficult, and I think that's why that issue was brought there, so that if there are difficulties, then the only people who are going to contribute are the salary people. The issue of the period, how long should this fund run? Is it indefinite? Is it indefinite, or is it, can we talk about 10 years, then from there we have a revolving fund? Because I believe these houses are going to be sold at an interest. So those are the issues, I think. The issues of doing housing in every counties. I don't know. We were in Narok, and the Narok people, the idea, they are not buying the idea because, one, they are not used to staying in Accra, that place, right? But when you go to other counties, they are for the idea. You go to Vihiga, they really, because the land, you go to Narok, not Narok, Kisii, Vihiga, where they have small pieces of land. Them they have the idea. They want to stay in a clustered place because there's shortage of houses. But I like the issues of slum creating and the idea of why can we start with the big towns where the demands for houses are higher than going to put houses somewhere whereby even the hub-tech becomes a problem. I mean, you can put houses, 1,000 houses, and how many people would take up them? So I think the issues of the penalties. Let's think about the counties where they are delayed salaries for 3 months, right? And they get money from the exchequer. So are we going to exempt them from the penalties? Because it's the same government which is delaying the salaries. So I like what basically what I'm saying is that I really like your presentation, and the engagement is very, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Raboni. In as much as you're raising very valid points on Raboni, I will ask the other honorable members. The questions you're asking is for us to think about what they have said and answer those questions. Now, make it a clarity.
That's a live feed from Parliament, where the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning in the National Assembly is currently holding public participation hearings on the housing levy at Parliament. The committee is engaging stakeholders in the field now. I've had a very valid question there, and perhaps, Engineer, we can talk about it. How long the fund is supposed to run? It could be 5, 10 years, 20 years. What if another government comes? There will be maybe some stalled projects. What happens?
By the way it is designed today, as an affordable housing program, where those who own these houses are supposed to acquire them at a commercial rate, not subsidized or free rate as in other jurisdictions where such funds are perpetual and every generation is entitled to a house as long as they qualify. The housing levy, the housing fund as is designed today in Kenya, it ought to have a time frame where now it is supposed to now generate its own revenue to sustain itself in future.
As opposed to ask to the continued deductions.
Exactly. It's supposed to be, it reaches the point where it is matured enough, it is enough assets out there to be able to attract affordable credit and continue sustaining the expansion of that program. But if it is a social program, then it's supposed to be a perpetual where generations to come will benefit if governments don't change in terms of the economic plan for the country.
To another question where, what happens to mortgage companies? There will be a lot of houses. They are also Kenyans. They are in business as well. Are they being complemented, or is it a competition?
You know, right now in Kenya, we have the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Corporation. It's a government and the banking and the banking sector partnership with also the IFC that came together to put money that is cheap to help Kenyans who want to acquire low-cost housing, get low-cost credit from that institution. And therefore, Kenya Mortgage Refinance Corporation is able to lend to banks who also lend to their customers at fairly discounted rates, as long as the house you're buying is within a certain bracket, which is referred as affordable, which is, I think, less than 6 million shillings per unit. And that facility is available. And the facility is also available to banks. So banks will not be run out of business. All banks they require to do is be able to participate in this program through the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Corporation and be able to sell. So, and even developers are also working with the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Corporation to build houses and sell through these facilities. So there are programs. The challenge we have is that the private players who are not enjoying the benefits of affordable housing, the biggest advantage affordable housing has is that they have access to some of the best public land anywhere in the country. So they are able to deliver a very nice project within the proximity of an urban area with the public utilities available to them at a much cheaper price. So if you are able to also give the same benefit to other private players, why would they not do that? If I can have my 10 acres available to me in a prime location, why would I not deliver an affordable, decent house for Kenyans to buy through the available commercial channels?
Looking at the Social Health Insurance Fund, one of the speed bumps that it met is that a number of sector players said they had not been involved. A good example is the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union said that in regards to this, we should have been involved. The government has its own engineers through the Ministry of Housing. What about you as a board, engineer, is it IEK?
There is a ABK and the IEK.
Yes.
As IEK engineers is a society, ABK is a regulator for engineers.
As engineers, have you been involved?
Definitely we've been involved, because any engineer who is handling a project within this program must be a registered engineer, must be a member of the society. So that is the involvement we have. But what is concerning the other engineers who are practicing privately, they don't have the ability to participate as consultant in these projects. Most of these projects are being run by government or public sector engineers. So the private sector is not heavily involved. But as the program expands, I believe that will be an opportunity for many engineers, architects and QSs to participate.
Let's look at the infrastructure now. Looking at the housing themselves, the project itself is supposed to be in each and every constituency in the country, and we have seen some of the infrastructure set up in some of the countries is really wanting. How do we improve this infrastructure? And we're still constructing the houses fast before improving the infrastructure fast.
Well, as a country, we have had a serious challenge where public utilities, for example, roads, water, electricity, come after housing. We have seen in many areas, you go to Syokimau, you go to Kitengela, it's housing that comes first. Then now the government in that area remembers we need to do a road. You understand?
Yeah.
So even right now, in some of these areas where the constituencies are doing the 200 units, you find they are using, as I said, public land, which definitely is accessible. But if we scale up those numbers, you'll find that we'll have to now to locate some of these houses in areas where the infrastructure is not there. And therefore the government will have to do that infrastructure to make that areas accessible. If, for example, in my area in Nakuru, Bahati, they are doing it where there was a DC office. And definitely at DC office, you'll find all the infrastructure is already in place. So that challenge is already mitigated by the fact that the government has some of the land which already has access to some of the infrastructure. Yes.
And the raw materials, the government said it's going to be subsidizing a lot of the building materials. And I have a construction for the last 2 years that is still almost halfway now. I remember the first time I was buying cement at about 500 shillings, 550. That is in January of 2022.
Yes.
As we speak right now, the same bag of cement is going for close to 900 shillings. And this, as we say, because this looks like an indefinite project. It's not going to end in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. A lot of raw materials are going to be changing in prices. How do we ensure, or how can the government ensure that at the end of the day, the houses remain affordable? Because the more these costs go high, the more the houses cost.
So to make these houses affordable, government must lose. And it must lose in this way. It must lose in terms of taxes. For you to build your house, you must go to the county for approvals. That's money you pay. You must, if you buy that land, you must pay stamp duty for it. And the CGT has to be paid by the person selling that land to you. Then when it comes to building that house, you must bring in consultants who must pay taxes. Then if you do the groundbreaking, you must go into the market and buy materials which are heavily taxed. So to make these houses really affordable, government must start finding ways where if a house is being done under the affordable housing program, there are tax rebates to each and every person participating. So the consultant will say, I consulted in this project, therefore I'm entitled to a tax relief. So I'll be able to transfer that benefit to the end consumer of the house. If I supply materials in this project, then I'm entitled to a tax relief for all the materials that I supply on that project. And therefore I can transfer that benefit to the end user. So you'll find a bag of cement today is going at 900 shillings. If the taxes are reduced or there is a tax rebate for that project, probably that bag should go at 700 or 600 shillings. But without those tax rebates and tax reliefs, it will be very hard to achieve the element of affordable housing. And with the inflation that we are experiencing today, it's also very hard to have those prices static, remaining there, when you find prices of materials are changing every day. Yes.
And talking about 120,000 jobs, especially on the TVETs, let's first of all cross over the Dr. Esther Moria, the PS TVETs, is currently addressing a function. I'm informed she's currently speaking. Let's first of all listen in.
Gender equality is a fundamental human right and a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. Mainstreaming gender into development is one of the central features of advancing gender equality and an essential element of good governance to ensure that institutions, policies, and programs respond to the needs, concerns, and interests of all stakeholders and distribute benefits equally between women and men. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya is also a signatory to the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, CESA 2016-2025, through which a commitment is made to expand TVET opportunities at both secondary and tertiary levels and strengthen linkages between the world of work and education and training systems. Kenya has continually been progressive in empowering gender equality by developing policies and institutional mechanisms in an endeavor to promote gender mainstreaming. Pertinent to this agenda are the Kenya Vision 2030, the sessional paper number 2 of 2019 on national policy on gender and development that provide for integration of gender equality and women empowerment in all sectors, education included. Ladies and gentlemen, to enhance job creation and employability through a well-trained and skilled workforce, the government of Kenya over the past 2 decades has demonstrated a strong commitment to achieving gender parity in primary, secondary, tertiary, education through policy reforms and program development. The Kenya Kwanza government has particularly laid focus on promoting technical and vocational education and training in Kenya due to the significant role this sector is playing in the socioeconomic development of the country. TVET equips both male and female trainees with pragmatic tools, skills, and technical know-how for job creation and employment. This sector, however, requires support and investment in setting up and strengthening their systems and programs to improve the status of gender equality and inclusion in the TVET sector and further contribute to closing gender gaps in training and employment. Currently, the status of gender mainstreaming in TVET sector is as follows. 1. Appointment of gender mainstreaming committee at the headquarters, and I have the representative here. Appointment of gender mainstreaming champions at the TVET institutions. Those are the people you saw there. Having institutional gender mainstreaming policies, establishment of daycare centers in some TVET institutions, such as Kisumu National Polytechnic, there is one and the principal is here. Kabete National Polytechnic, I haven't seen the principal. Sigalagara National Polytechnic and Meru National Polytechnic, and I am sure they are here. Number 5, encouraging women and people living with disabilities to apply for advertised positions.
That has been TVET's PS, Dr. Esther Moria. They are live at Safari Park during the National Gender and Equality Commission launch of the 2023 report, which also encompasses the 2023 and equality diagnostics. Allow me not to delve much into that because of the interest of time, but we have our reporter on the ground to keep us updated on that and much more in our subsequent bulletin. Just in case you joined us, we're just wrapping up on matters affordable housing with the experts themselves, and we have engineer Crispus Wadhiba to try and put some of these things into perspective. Remember, the public participation is currently underway, and even as we speak, the Finance Committee is currently having those sessions at Parliament. We'll be bringing you more in regards to this. Maybe what the PS TVET is has mentioned in regards to how now TVET, we have so many TVETs, they are doing digitization. I remember speaking to her yesterday, they are doing digitization, they're expanding the sector, because affordable housing, if we have 120,000 youths who did not have jobs, and most of them have been drawn from the TVETs, how do we ensure that we keep the TVETs even more attractive? I was saying here earlier that mostly people who do TVET courses, mostly during my time, it was those people who did not score very high grades. But now that mentality has changed. How do we even make them more attractive so that we may feed into the affordable housing agenda as we wrap up?
Well, you see, with the new curriculum, the CBC, this program works very well with TVETs, because what the CBC program does, once you finish junior secondary, you are taken to a high school or a senior secondary where the speciality that you've been identified to be strong in, the area of strength that you have, is where you'll be taken to in terms of the high school, in terms of the higher education, the secondary school you're pursuing. Once you finish your secondary school, having spent a great deal of time, for example, in sciences, in engineering, in art and whatever, then you will now go to a TVET, for example, knowing very well what you want to pursue. And those who are going to go to the university, also they'll go knowing what they want to do. So TVET will have to be ready to receive a great number of CBC graduates who really understand what they want. A lot of the people who end up in TVET, some of them they end there because they were told you did not score very well. But right now we are going to have people who are going to TVET knowing very well, I want to be a fundi, I want to be a mechanical technician, I want to be an electrical technician, because that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years. in the high school. So the TVETs will play a very vital position in terms of consuming and preparing these people into the next stage of their careers.
Allow me to give you 1 minute for your closing statement in regards to the whole affordable housing program, from wherever anybody is watching from, and also from wherever everyone. There's some people who are being deducted, they're not comfortable with it. There are some people who are being deducted the amount and they're comfortable with it, and there are Kenyans who genuinely require these houses.
Well, the truth of the matter, in my opinion, is that this housing program is a good housing program. The way it is designed, the way it is being executed is very good. The only challenge is the financing part of it. We need to have a proper conversation on who is financing what and for who. If it is all of us financing for the poor, let it be said as so. But let us not cover up things as if we are financing for the poor, but the end beneficiary are people like me and you, masquerading as poor. So we need to have this conversation. We need to exhaust this conversation so that at the end of this process, all of us fully understand that even if I'm paying my taxes for this housing program, it is for the poor. We still pay taxes for education. We pay taxes for roads. We pay taxes for water. We pay taxes for health. We don't complain. Even when we don't consume some of those services. Many of us pay taxes for education, but our children go to private schools. We don't complain. We know at the end of the day, education for this whole country benefits all of us, because even if I'm in the private sector, I still need those young children from public schools to come and work for me to grow my business. So I also need these poor people from poor households to come from decent homes to come and work for me. So I don't mind paying for them.
All right, Engineer Crispus Athimba, thank you, who is a Principal Consultant Infrastructure Project and also a Leadership and Governance Expert there. We were looking at the in-depth of the affordable housing, not all from the public participation that is currently underway, but on the ground. They said things are different, but the government is working hand in hand with Kenyans to actualize the housing agenda and looking at the loopholes that the High Court and the Court of Appeal had pointed out. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Njue. Susan Thuku has been a sign language interpreter. Earlier on, we had Byron Abudi. I'm giving the baton to the Swahili desk for Kurunzi Mashinani and Tamrini. Gladys Mongai is in studio.
Are you a talented artist? Or are you passionate about a topic you want to discuss? But money can be very hard to find for an upcoming artist. Don't worry, Studio Mashinani has got your back. Sign up on ajira.co.ke to book a session with our music and video producers across the country. Work on your music, jingles, spoken words, and even podcasts to realize your dream. All for free. Studio Mashinani, Radani Talent.
Foreign diaspora remittances versus traditional foreign exchange honors.
And currently we have the highest earnings from these remittances through labor migration. We can go up to $1 trillion in remittances just because of the earnings that we get through labor migration.
What has occasioned the big shift? As she marks 1 year in office, Labor and Social Protection Cabinet Secretary Florence Bore explains the nexus between increased foreign job opportunities and the country's economic growth.
Alikuja akinipoint akiniambia, wewe katoto unafanya nini hapa? Mzazi wako wako wapi? Mbona hujaenda shuleni? Na kwa hakika mimi ni mtu mzima na niko na ID.
Hiyo sasa unaharibu. Anaharibu nini?
Ni mtu mzima huyu.
Na kwani umuoni?